Hello, and welcome to the Cinema ATL podcast. The Cinema ATL podcast is a weekly podcast that examines the world of entertainment through the lens of local Atlanta filmmakers. That would be us, your hosts. I'm Michael D. Friedman, and that is
Martin Kelly.
And this week, with Father's Day coming this weekend, we thought we'd talk about some of our favorite movies about dear old dad and our latest top 3. But first, Martin, why don't you tell our listeners how they can help the podcast out?
Sure, you can help the podcast by listening like you're doing right now. But once you're done listening, we want you to share it, subscribe, rate it, and comment on it on your favorite podcast format. And those formats could be anything from Spotify to iHeartRadio to SoundCloud to Amazon to Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and even on YouTube.
And we also want to hear from you. You can always tweet us at CinemaATL or at our personal accounts, which mine is at Clever Transient.
Or you can check me out and hit me up at Marte_Real1.
And of course, our Instagram is at CinemaATL Podcast. And I'm going to say something I don't normally do, but also we talk about sharing and commenting on the podcasting platforms itself. But please share us wherever you're on social media as well. You can share us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all over the place. We'd really appreciate the support. But then you can also check us out at
the cinemaatl.com.
Yep, and check us out there. And since we are approaching Father's Day, we're going to talk about our top 3 movies about dads. Let's get into it.
Definitely. And as we always have to preface this every time, just in case this is your first time listening. When we do a top 3, our top 3 lists are just our opinions. We're not trying to make some kind of qualitative, government official list. We are just giving our opinion.
Yeah, and this is also just what we're thinking at this moment, right? These lists are ever evolving. They could change at any moment. But right now, this is how we feel. And if you ask us tomorrow, it might be a little bit different. But this is our mood right now. And the way we'll do this is we'll list out our top 3. First, we'll start at number 3 and work our way up. We'll just list them, and then after we list them, we will discuss why we picked them, and then get into some honorable mentions that just missed our lists. So anyway, let's get on to it. The top 3. Martin, your number 3.
My number 3 is not necessarily about dads, and we can talk about the methodology in a moment, but it is a movie to watch with your dad, and one I like to watch with my dad, which is Rudy.
Oh, yes. Well, that's got a dad element to it, too.
It does. And that's part of what, like, when I talk about it more in depth, I'll talk about why it's a great kind of Father's Day type of movie, for sure.
All right. My number 3 is a film that's not really about the relationship of the dad, but I think it's a really good quality dad in it. And it's 10 Things I Hate About You.
Nice. That's pretty cool. So my number 2 is a movie about a dad, and a great dad, and an inspiring story, The Pursuit of Happiness.
Nice. Yep. Starring a real life father and son. So
that's right.
That's cool. Number 2 for me is Big Fish.
Oh, cool. Yeah, definitely. I can't wait to talk about that a little bit too, for sure. So that brings us to my number 1, and my number 1 to me, it's kind of probably predictable, but Field of Dreams.
Oh yeah, definitely. I went a different way with my number 1. It's about a dad, but I don't know if you'd want this dad. But my number 1 is the Royal Tenenbaums.
I totally had that floating around, and I thought about it, but I did not go with it. But I respect it. I respect that. That's very cool.
We didn't say it had to be about good dads.
That's right. And so I've got an honorable mention of which is like the opposite of a good dad. So we'll talk about that later. But cool. It's a fun movie. I definitely like it. So interesting. So this is one where we actually did not overlap at all.
Not at all. Cool. Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about our films. Number 3, you had Rudy. I had 10 Things I Hate About You. Which one do you want to talk about first?
Let's talk about 10 Things first, and then we'll talk a little bit about Rudy, because Rudy's sentimental for both of us in a lot of ways. So.
Right. Well, 10 Things I Heard About You, it's really not about the dad relationship in it, but he does play a pretty prominent role. And I just like the way that he's played in the film by Larry Miller, who plays the dad to Julia Stiles and her sister in the film. And it's just, I just like the relationship of it, and it feels real, and it feels honest, and I just like the way that he may be exasperated dealing with his teenage daughters, but you still see that he's a good person at heart, and he has good advice for them. And I don't know, it's just something about the relationship between them that just it makes it more than just 10 Things I Hate About You was surprisingly high on our top 100 list that we put out.
Right.
And
Right.
it's really funny, teen romantic comedy in my opinion. It's been always been more than that for me, because it's got a lot of heart to it. And I think at the center of it is actually the relationship between this father and his daughters. And
I think you're right. I think absolutely that's what sort of elevates this film, is because this could easily been the throwaway silly dad, right?
right,
It could have easily been that, and it would have been fine for a movie. But this movie, even though the dad is kind of over the top in some of his behavior,
right,
he's over the top because he cares so much for his
exactly,
daughters, and he really is just trying to create the best outcome for them, right? And so you can tell, that he really, just wants the best for his daughters, and that's really heartwarming. And so even though it is silly in some senses, but at the same time, great. It's a great dad. It's a great dad character for sure.
all right. Well, number 3 for you is Rudy, which is a
Yeah,
film I
and so
love,
Rudy,
so good call.
yeah, Rudy, we both love, and it's not necessarily on the surface about dads, but in a certain way, it is. There's a very strong pull about dads, right? And it's on my list because my dad's a huge fan of Notre Dame.
Yeah,
He's and he's a football coach, and he's very sentimental as well. And so we both like this movie quite a bit, and we love the underdog story. So that's why it's on my list. But at the same time, you could really make a case for this being a strong movie about love of dads and sons, and Rudy's motivation, his biggest motivation was for his dad to see him on that field,
right.
to show his dad that he did what he set out to do, and became that fighting Irish player, and so it's really the emotional kind of core of the film, and the finale, especially for his dad to get to see him on the field, playing for the Fighting Irish. So this makes it that kind of special father son type movie for me.
And what I like about the relationship between Rudy and his dad is that it's not one or the other, right? It's not like the dad that's like doesn't care about his son or doesn't believe in his son, but he's also
Right.
not the super sweet, like super supportive father either. I mean, he does want success for Rudy, but he also knows, the reality of the world. And so he's conflicted himself. So I think that makes it a really good character dynamic. So,
No, I think you're right. I think it's definitely nuanced, and at the same time, it's again, like I said, a lot of different reasons. My main reason for it is just because it's the kind of movie that me and my dad would love to watch together. You know what I mean? This
right.
kind of underdog, sports movie with an inspiring ending. So that's why it's on there. But there is a case to be made about the dad relationship, like you said, very nuanced and very kind of realistic. I mean, he loves his son, but he's not uh, overtly supportive. But at the same time, he's very proud of his
Right.
son. So that was certainly a great dynamic, and again worthy of inclusion on this list.
All right. Well, let's move to number 2. Number 2 for me is Big Fish. I'll talk about that a little bit. So Tim Burton directed Big Fish, and this is the most sentimental Tim Burton movie I think you'll ever see. It definitely has the Tim Burton touch to it. It's got a lot of interesting things in it, visual style, and very interesting tale. It's basically at the heart, though, is a young son trying to understand his father. So Billy Crudup plays the son who uh, his father's passed away, and he's trying to understand, how how his father actually lived his life, and all he knows is these big tales, big fish tales, right? That's where the name comes from. He tells all these just like impossible stories that have become like just legendary, and he thinks that that's not the real truth, but we really get to examine that some of these tales are really true, and that how he lived his life. And Ewan McGregor plays the father at a younger age, and we get to see these fantasy tales that are actually based in reality, and there's a lot of magic to it, and the father son relationship is at the heart of it, and it's very emotional. It's a very emotional movie, especially towards the end.
Right. You hit the nail on the head. This is certainly the most sentimental movie that he's ever made in terms of that, and it's a really fine movie, and certainly a really good examination of how kind of generations might misunderstand their parents,
Right.
and not really not really sort of appreciate everything that they've gone through. And so I think this is a good story in that sense of really think about you know where your parents have been and what they've done, and especially in fathers, in certain ways, fathers and sons.
Right.
But definitely sentimental and a good movie. So I definitely see why you would put it on the list.
And I need to correct myself. I believe I said that his father was dead, but he's dying, and he's having these conversations with his father, and
Right.
that's what makes it sentimental and touching. Um, just to clarify myself a little bit.
Right. But in that case, that gives it that extra layer of hope,
Right.
that he's not gone, and there's still that chance to connect,
Right.
to reconnect at the end, which is cool.
And number two for you.
So number two for me is The Pursuit of Happiness, and if people don't know this film, this is Will Smith and his son Jaden, playing father and son, and it's a very unique story based on a true story, actually, of a man who fought homelessness to become um, very successful, very successful investment stockbroker, basically, and doggedly pursued his dream through all these obstacles, which included obviously being homeless, like I mentioned. And so it's very gritty, yet very hopeful. And what is great about it, and reasons on my list, because now my list is strictly about movies about the dads, right? And so this one is about a dad who won't give up because of his love for his son. You know what I mean? And so
Right.
it's very inspiring. It's one of Will Smith's best performances, honestly. Will Smith is fantastic. A lot of people don't really appreciate how good Will Smith is because he does a lot of fun movies a lot,
Right. Right.
and so and then sometimes when he does, the more serious movies, people get turned off by how serious they are. But this one, I think is kind of perfect for him, in the sense that he's really terrific in the film. And again, he embodies the spirit of a father who's never going to give up on his dream because he can't let his son see him give up, because he's got to instill that hope in his son. So that's what I like about the film so much.
Yeah, and this is Jaden Smith's first role, right? He was really young in this,
Yes,
and he's really good in it,
absolutely.
and it's really, really touching to see father and son in real life play father and son on the big screen, and I think that the chemistry, of course, is natural in that regard, and it works much better than their other movie they put together,
No, it
After
definitely
Earth
does.
or whatever.
Yeah, it definitely does, and I think that's unfortunately that's the kind of movie that makes people forget how good Will Smith actually is.
Right,
Because that one goes astray in a lot of ways. But this is, Will Smith is very talented. In this one, obviously the chemistry is there, like you mentioned, but the message is there, and that message about, he can't give up, not because of himself. He can't give up because of his son. You know what I mean? And so I think that's what that message shines through, and and certainly resonates. So that's why it's on. That's why it's on my list.
It's been a while since I've seen it. I think I saw it in the theater, and I think that's the only time I've actually seen it. But I do remember enjoying it a lot, and I do remember the Jaden Smith and Will Smith's relationship being very like really nice on screen. So I do recommend the movie, and in fact, I probably need to check it out again myself because I've forgotten a lot about it. But I did enjoy it, and it's a very good film. So I compliment you on your selection.
Ah, thank you.
you, you can take that compliment to the bank, and they'll tell you why you're bringing this to the bank. Number one. Now we get to their number ones. For me, this is a movie about a dad, but he's probably the one of the worst dads you'll ever see on screen. I mean, just like not from a bad nature a bit of it, but he's just not a good dad.
Right.
The Royal Tenenbaums, and this movie is so fun with Gene Hackman and his character and his relationship with grown his grown sons and daughters, and just the fact that he is just the most like oblivious inept dad imaginable. It just makes it hysterical. And Wes Anderson directed the film. It was written by Owen Wilson and Wes Anderson, and it's just it's kind of the prototypical Wes Anderson film. I mean, there's not much I could say about it. If you like Wes Anderson, you're gonna like Royal Tenenbaums, and if you like Wes Anderson, you've already seen it. So,
Right. Exactly.
I just love and I love the relationship between Gene Hackman's character and not just his wife, but like his relationship with Pagoda,
Yeah. Yeah.
his valet, basically. Um,
Yeah.
it's just I don't know. It's just something so hysterical about everything that Gene Hackman does in this movie, and the fact was he nominated for this movie at all? Because he should have been. This
He
is like
should
one
have
of
been.
his
I don't
best
know if he
performances.
was. That's what's funny. And like what's weird, what's weird is that, Gene Hackman is such a kind of enigma
Right,
because you would never think of Gene Hackman doing a Wes Anderson movie. You know what I
right,
mean? It's not like Bill Murray. You know what I mean? He's not
right,
that type of person, or we don't know enough about him to know what kind of person he is. That's the thing.
right.
And he's always done serious parts. And so for him to do, and he's done funny stuff since, like he did Get Shorty, of course, and things of that nature. But he's never been funnier than in the Royal Tenenbaums, honestly. And I
Yeah,
agree with you. He's he's such a character, such a clueless, bad dad that it's hilarious. And he's got a different relationship with each of his children
exactly.
in the
That's what's
film.
great about it. It's like his relationship with everybody is just so bizarre. But yeah, there's especially his family, his children. But yeah,
Yeah, it's like, and it's like it's so funny because it's so like, as ridiculous as it is, it's also got such a resonance of like logic to it. You know what I mean? Like there's a reason he treats each of his kids differently. You know
right,
what I mean?
right.
And so it's kind of again it's hilarious and a really funny movie. And again, like you mentioned, if people like Wes Anderson, they've already seen it. So
Right. Yeah.
if you
I'm not
don't
going to
like
sell
Wes
you on
Anderson, yeah,
it.
here's the thing: if you've never seen Wes Anderson stuff and you think by reputation he's maybe too weird for you, this would be the film to watch actually, because
Right.
there is enough of it, I think, appeal on a different level other than the sort of quirkiness that is usually associated with Wes Anderson to actually enjoy this one. So if you've never seen Wes Anderson and you want to figure out what he's like, check this one out because this one would really actually give you a great introduction to his style.
So he didn't get nominated for any of the bigger awards. He did win the AFI award for best actor that year.
Yeah,
But that's the only nomination that he really had out of
I
the
think he
major
was. I think
awards.
he was snubbed. I think he was snubbed, but again, these were the days of you had to lobby, and that's the thing
Right.
about what I think happened in this is that Gene Hackman's not a lobbyist. He's never been that type, so
Mhm.
I don't think he did much in support of trying to get a nomination for the film. But he certainly, I could see him in a different era getting nominated for this for sure.
Right. Yeah. All right. Well, that
So
leads us to your number one.
yeah, my number one is kind of a no-brainer, I think. For anybody who knows anything about the film, Field of Dreams. Of course, the famous Kevin Costner film where he builds a baseball field in the middle of a cornfield in Iowa, and takes a huge risk in doing that because his home is being foreclosed on. But yet, a voice tells him, "If you build it, he will come." And so the "He Will Come" pays off uh, in a very emotional way
Spoiler
in,
alert.
in the end of this film. What's that?
I said spoiler alert.
Yeah. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen Field of Dreams, but I'm trying to be as vague as possible. But the film is all about sort of baseball, which is America's pastime. And that's kind of the residue of the film itself. And there's a lot of father son kind of issues explored in the film.
Right.
So I think that's why it makes for a really good father Father's Day type movie. A lot of dads like baseball. A lot of dads like Kevin Costner, and a lot of dads will enjoy sort of the ending of this film. And so I think that's why it's on top of the list. It really resonates with that father and son heart of the film.
Well, and baseball is like pretty much the ultimate father son bonding activity. So it's
Right.
it's really at the heart of the matter. Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah, Field of Dreams is a really good movie. Once again, I haven't. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but it is definitely a classic. And if you haven't seen it, you should definitely check it out. It's it's really sentimental. It's a really sentimental film.
Definitely, it definitely is, and it's one of those that actually plays quite a bit on the cable
Yeah.
if you're still on
Yep.
regular cable. Because I've seen it like maybe 3 weeks ago. Actually, I saw it again. So,
Yeah.
and I watched the
TNT,
whole
those
thing.
types of things. Yeah. Yeah. That
I
paired
watched
with
the whole thing.
Shawshank, they like to
Right? No, it's totally
rerun
in
them
that
over and
same
over and
realm.
over again.
Exactly. Exactly.
All right, so that's our top three. Why don't we reiterate them before we get into our honorable mentions?
Sure.
My top three was number three, 10 Things I Hate About You. Number two, Big Fish. And number one, The Royal Tenenbaums.
And my top three are number three, Rudy. Number two, The Pursuit of Happiness, and my number one was Field of Dreams.
Yours are a lot more sentimental than mine. I will give you that
No,
much.
totally. I agree. I think they
Well,
are.
the Big Fish is
I,
pretty sentimental, but definitely, I went in a different route with the Royal Tenenbaums for sure.
right. Right. Definitely.
Well,
Definitely.
why don't we get into some of our honorable mentions? I mean, one of my honorable mentions is the epitome of a bad dad. Empire Strikes Back. Um,
Oh, okay. Okay. Yes.
and my other ones were like kind of another one I had on here was Onward.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And that
That's a
one's
recent one, but
really
yes.
good. It's recent. But if you're thinking about dads, I mean, that's the whole heart of the matter. Is they're trying to bring their
Mhm.
dad back through magic to spend one more day with him, and it's more about the relationship that one of them had with the dad and one of them didn't, and
Right.
because he was just older before his dad passed away, and and then just kind of the journey along the way, kind of like teaches them to appreciate each other and understand the brotherly love that forms when a father passes away, and how uh, the older brother looks after the younger one. So that's
Right.
a
No,
really
no,
good
it's
movie if you haven't seen it.
it is good. Yeah, yeah. It
In
went
fact,
under the radar kind of,
yeah, I think
I
it
think.
did, and in fact, I liked it better than some of the other Pixar movies that might have gotten a bigger attention, like Soul and things like that have been out recently. Um, I really enjoyed it. And then my other three are kind of not really about the fathers, but the fathers play a pretty big role in them, and they're all like action oriented. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, of
Yes.
course, with the
Okay.
relationship between Indiana Jones and his dad. Great playing between the two, Harrison Ford and Sean Connery. It's really good
Very
pairing.
funny. Very good.
Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, which is all about
Hmm. Hmm.
uh, Star Lord trying to find out where he comes from and who's his real dad, and his
Yeah.
dad turns out to be kind of a dick, but
Right.
but he's,
Right.
we didn't say this is about good dads. And then finally, the one that might not people might not. I've talked about this film before, but people might not think of it as a father movie. But Train to Busan, which is
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
I think. Yeah. You gave a great. I mean, I see that based on the time you talked about it. I do.
right,
I do think that it qualifies for sure. Yeah.
right.
The way you described it does sound like a dad film.
And you should watch it
So
if you haven't
okay.
seen it. So
I
it's
still got
really
to see it.
interesting.
Yes, you're
Yeah,
right.
the
I definitely
dad.
still want to see it.
It's basically about a dad trying to uh, save his daughter at all costs, even though their relationship might not be the best. And you really learn,
Right.
what it means to be a dad, and it's kind of at the heart of the film.
No,
Those are
cool.
my
No, I
honorable
mean,
mentions.
I totally respect that because I think the way you described it, I certainly could see that as a dad film. So it's definitely on there. I've got a couple that I want to mention really briefly as honorable mentions. One is an animated movie, but not that one, and I did consider that one actually. But Finding Nemo, of
Right.
course,
Yep. Yep.
quintessential worried dad, basically.
Yeah.
Just a fun film and kind of a classic dad story.
You know what? Before you go on to your next one, I need to watch that movie again now that I don't think I saw it since I've become a dad, which is kind of
Oh,
surprising
okay.
because kids
Yeah.
normally like to watch those types of movies, but for some reason I can't get my son to watch movies, which is just like, I don't know. Who are you?
Wow, that
Um,
is weird.
but anyway, I need to watch it again because I feel like I would really relate to that dad in that film because there's a lot going on when you're like you want to
Yeah.
protect your son from the world, and
Yes.
it's hard to let go sometimes. So I definitely need to watch that now. Anyway,
Totally. I mean, and it being an animated film, that's surprisingly deep. The storyline about
yeah,
a
it definitely is.
overprotective
Yeah,
dad, for sure, for sure. And so another one is kind of a different take on dads, but still powerful. Is He Got Game, which Denzel plays the father
right, right.
of the number one basketball prospect in the country, and they let him out of prison to try and get him to do something, and so he's there to sort of influence his son. But in the end, he just wants the best for his son, and he tries to teach his son a lesson. You see the sort of their relationship had been fraught over time, but it's powerful. It's a powerful film, and Denzel's great in it. It's interesting. It's an interesting Spike Lee film because of Spike Lee doing what Spike Lee does well when he's doing it well, which is experimenting. He's got a lot of experimental
Right,
filmmaking techniques he
right,
uses in
right,
it.
right.
And interesting film, but
Yeah,
obviously Denzel Washington makes a compelling dad.
we talked about that in our top three basketball movies, and I hadn't
Yeah.
seen it when we had talked about it. I don't think I'd actually seen like half of it when we talked about it.
Hmm.
And it's a really good movie, really good. Definitely check
Definitely, definitely. And my last is a bad dad. It's a really bad dad, and
it.
I
Worse
don't
than
even
Darth
know
Vader.
this. No, no, it's worse. Is worse than Darth Vader, if you can believe that.
Okay.
The Great Santini.
Hmm.
Now, do you even know which one this is?
I have not seen that. No.
Okay, this is uh, this is an older movie. I
Right.
saw it when
Yeah.
I was a
Yeah.
kid. And it's it's Robert Duvall who plays kind of an overbearing Marine dad who's
Hmm.
extremely
Hmm.
hard on his son. And so um, again, the relationship is fraught with tension, obviously, and maybe a bit of abuse. But it's really the character is really compelling. I mean, because Robert Duvall, in his own way, is just trying to you know do right by his son. Even though he's doing it the wrong way, and it's a really it's based on a book, based on
Hmm. Hmm.
maybe even a true story. I'm not sure about that, but certainly based on a famous book from the '70s. And Robert Duvall is fantastic at it. So that's what's one of the things why it came to mind. Just out of the blue, came to my mind as a Father's Day film, even though he's represents terrible
Yeah. Right.
dad.
Right. Right. No,
But
I've heard good things about that film. I haven't seen it. No, yeah,
but I mean, his performance is so so amazing. People like I watched The Godfather recently too. And so just remembering how good Robert Duvall was
right,
back in the day.
right.
The great Santini, he really just puts on a show for sure.
Cool. I'll have to check it out. Well, all right. That's our lists and our honorable mentions. What did you think? Do you have a different opinion? Let us know. We want to hear from you. You can always, comment to us on Twitter or Facebook or wherever you get your podcasts. We'd really appreciate any input. We'd love to hear what you have to think about. What are your favorite movies about dads? And once again, before we wrap up, I want to thank Eureka Failure for providing the music as they do every week for us. Check them out at eurekafailure.bandcamp.com. And then before we wrap up, Martin, what are your final words of wisdom?
Well, this is not just apropos to fathers, but it is probably especially true to fathers. And, this is just kind of a quote to be strong. You never know who you are inspiring. If you're a dad, you pretty much know who you're inspiring. But,
Right.
If you're not, you may not know who you're inspiring, but just be strong because there's people looking up to you.
Right.
And so you need to be mindful of that and set a good example.
Well, thank you, Martin. I will do that. Thank you for. I will try. I will try to set a good example, not just to my son, but to all of our Cinema ATL listeners. Anyway, that's it for this week. We'll be back again next time, and we'll talk to you later. Have a good one.